Okay, welcome. We're going to build a grapher in Excel, and we're going to specialize in a polynomial and hopefully get you comfortable in maybe a little bit more advanced experience in Excel than you're used to as well. I think this will be beneficial for moving forward. Maybe not even math as much as it is in science, just because a lot of science courses fall on the use of Excel. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. These are in Excel, give you some of the background. These are called ribbons. And if your ribbon is not currently, if you have a ribbon that's not shown, you can click on any of these and see the ribbon. But I always like to work, if I'm creating work, and have my ribbon thumbtacked or pinned on so I can see the ribbon at a given time. Typically, you'll be on the home ribbon. So our first grapher that we're going to build is a polynomial grapher, and we have cells, and we'll talk more about cells and things you can do by dragging cells around or what's called replicating cells. But on the insert ribbon, we're just going to create an equation, and the items on insert ribbons do not go into cells such as this. This is a cell. I could drag it around. I can replicate it. There's things we can do with that, but these items that are on the insert primarily just float over the top of the cell. So I'm going to insert an equation. It will not go into cell K6, and when I do that, I get these little options I can use, as well as a lot of symbols. So the equation I'm going to type in is just y equals, I know this is really small, I'm going to go A, and then I want x to the, so here's our subscript, superscript, so I'm going to click it. I want this, so I'm going to go x and to the fifth. And then I'm just going to step over with my cursor just to the right a little bit. I'm going to go plus B. I want another one of these. It's a little clumsy, and there may be other ways to do this by working in a different word type editor, but we'll get through this pretty quickly. Keep inserting scripts here. I wanted a plus in front of that one. Let's see what I got here. Plus C. Back that up just a moment here. My mistake here. I want plus C, and then I want my script. I thought I did that, but C, x to the third. Just stepping to the right with my cursor. Plus D. I want x to the second. So x to the second. Step with my cursor to the right. Plus EX plus F. And we've got it at that point. And all I'm going to do is put that up near the top. It's kind of as a reference, but also for the viewer. Maybe increase the font size a little bit. We can come back around and play with that. And I just put that up in an expanded row 1. One thing you may end up noticing, if we're split here, we expand, that item will pretty well just stay put. There's lots of formatting things you can do to this. You can give it a background, but that's for a later time. Okay, so the thought behind this is our user is going to be able to come in, choose values for A, B, C, D, E, and F, and choose an X minimum, X maximum, maybe a Y minimum, Y maximum, be able to see the graph of their function. So please, if you're doing this at home or you're working ahead or you're doing it in class, we're going to put items in the same cells. I appreciate that some of you may have some experience and want to get creative, but if you aren't setting things up in the same cells that I'm putting things in and you have questions and we're getting off track along the way, it causes kind of a big concern on my part. So in cell B2, I'm just going to put A space equals, and so on. B space equals as we go down. C space equals. I've made my font a little bit larger just for video purposes. You can do whatever you want with that. I don't care how you customize the appearance of these A through Fs. You may want to just have everything on your form centered. I'm on my home ribbon now for purposes. And I'm just going to populate this one with some values. I'm just going to go 1, -2. Oh, I don't know why Jonathan Myers just popped up here. There's a look at my We got some privacy issues here we're working on. Maybe I'll edit that out. If not, you just saw my seniors that just are graduating this year from the tennis team. So B, I'm going to put in -2 here. I'll put let's see, a 2, it doesn't really matter. 3, a -1, and a 2. So I think you're catching on to this quickly. This would be y equals 1x to the 5th minus 2x to the 4th plus 2x to the 3rd plus 3x squared, etc. Okay, then I'm going to go down. One of our later functions, we're going to actually have a g equals as well. I'm going to leave a blank space here. I'm going to go down to B10, and I'm going to type in x min, maybe just with a colon, and x max. And I'm going to, right now, I'm just going to go -4 to 5. No real reason I'm choosing those values. Underneath that, I'm going to go y min, y max. The y min, y max will be handled at a later date. Down here, I'm going to put in, so now I'm in B15, x equals, y equals, m equals, that's going to be our slope finder, and then I'm going to put in a round statement. And if that doesn't fit, you can either resize this cell like this, or if you get things that don't fit, they will auto-fit if you select the column or row and you go to the right side or the bottom and double-click. And it'll say, okay, that looks like the size you might want. Okay, so at that point, I'm ready to start building a big chart, and we're going to do a 1,000-element chart. I've done this in the past with 10,000-element charts. We're going to do this with a 1,000-element chart so we can get some good accuracy. And I'm going to build that where the user can't see it. I mean, the user will be able to see it if they want to go look for it, but the user doesn't need to see that. So I'm gonna actually hide a bunch of rows here. I'm going to select from. You don't have to do this. This is just for video purposes, but I'm going to select from row 12 down through row, you'll see why I'm doing this, maybe 97 or so. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to hide. I'll unhide them later. So I'm going to put a big T-chart down here starting in row 101. It's actually going to be a 1001 element T-chart. Okay, in A99, I'm just going to put INCR. That stands for increment, and that's going to be how much we're counting by. And I want to take this value minus this value and divide it by however many values I want in my, or however many entries I want in my T-chart. So in this cell, I'm going to put in equals. If I don't put in equals, it doesn't know I'm a formula. And now, so I want parentheses, I want cell C11 minus cell C10. Now I could just type that in. I'm typing it in now, C11, and it recognizes that cell. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit my minus. And now I can also, instead of typing in that cell, I can click on the cell. That I find very convenient. So it's going to be divided by that, that subtraction that I'm going to divide by, I think I'm going to go 999. And you'll see what I'm doing with that in just a moment. And that is probably a rounded value, but that's okay. It'll work for our purposes. And I'm going to, in cell A100, I'm going to start my T-chart, X, in B100, Y. And now, it would be reasonable to think that you might assume in A101 I'm going to put -4 because that's my X minimum. However, if the user says I want this to be -3, I want this to update. So I'm going to instead put equals, and I'm going to click on that cell containing my minimum. And now when they choose -3.14 for the minimum, they get that automatically updated here. Okay, here's the big formula. Oh, I guess before I do that, I'll handle getting my T-chart set up on the left. All right, so in this cell, what I want is, I want it to be equal to what is in the cell above it. I'm going to widen this out just for a moment. Shoot. Control Z, I'm going to get back out of here, delete this, and start that over. Delete. Let's do this again. I'm just going to widen this so you can kind of see what I'm doing formula-wise here. So I want this to equal this, and then I want to add on to that my increment. And that should make sense for us. And all I need to do is do that 1,000 times, or 999 times again. Well, there's a quick way to do it, and that's by replicating. We notice when I have a cell selected, right now my cursor is this big plus sign, big white plus sign. I'm just floating. If I double click in a cell, I'm editing the cell. I hit enter. If I float over the edge of the cell, I can grab it, move it. Sometimes there's a reason for that. Sometimes it's because of bad planning. But if I float over this bottom corner, I get this little symbol. And that is replicate. And we're going to use replicate to create the rest of our T-chart. Okay, before I do that, and you'll see what I'm doing here in just a moment, I'm going to change my B99 to $99. And now I'm going to float over this. And if I'm going to have a 1,000 element T-chart, I'm going to need to go down from 101 to 1,100. So I'm replicating down, I'm dragging down to 1,100. We used to do this to 10,000, but that might be a little overkill. So if I go past it, if I stop too soon, no big deal. It's like if I stop here, no big deal. But if I go to 1,100, let's see what value we get there. There's my 5. They say, well, what's special about that? Well, that's what we said to end on. So if I go from 0.01234 and I go to 5, I still start at 0.01234. I still get to 5. If I change this to 2.156, I still get from my start to my finish. And that is 1,000 elements. So pretty slick process there. I want to show you what that dollar sign's about now. So here's my first, that's not a formula that I'm working with. Here's my first formula for my next increment. My next or another formula down here, if you look at this one, this says, let's take, notice the blue, let's take A106 and add it to this B99. Let's take A109. So when I replicated, everything in column A just tracked along to my next position. It's always, let's add the cell above to this fixed increment. Well, without that B99 in here, or without that dollar sign, watch what happens here. Not only do I get an error, but take a look what's happening here. I'm adding A105 to B103. So the dollar sign just fixes that cell in place. So I'm just going to delete this one out. No big deal. I'm going to jump down to where I have a good one and replicate that up. Let's get that right where it belongs. Okay, and now we're back to where we were. Okay, Y values. Here's the biggie. I'm going to go equals. I'm just following this right here. I want A times my chosen X value. Here it is. Raised to the 5th. There's my AX to the 5th plus B. Clicking is very convenient here. Times my X value. Ooh. I'm going to stop there just for a second just so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to widen this column out. So let's see. That's A X to the 5th plus B X to the 4th plus C times, you have to put the times in there, it's not implied, X to the 3rd plus my D value times my X value again to the 2nd plus my E value times, thank you, X plus my F value. Okay, now that is great, and I can replicate that, and all seems well for right now. Watch what happens here. See how the numbers start kind of jumping around? I'm going to jump to here and take a look at this, and take a look at the values that are being used here. It's now using these values. Well, that is because I did not dollar sign properly. So I go back up here, and I want these X's, the A101s, I want that to become A102s and A103s, etc. But I want all of these A through F's, I want all of those things that are in column C to stay constant. So C dollar sign, 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 enter. And now when I replicate that, well, that makes a little more sense. We're just moving by tiny increments. Our X value shouldn't be changing that much. Now here's a really cool feature in Excel. There are tons. I could drag this all the way down to 1100. However, Excel's smart enough, I'm going to delete these, to know that if we have a column of data and we want to replicate next to that, chances are you want to replicate that thing all the way down. Could that have possibly gone all the way and only to the bottom? Yep, it went all the way down that chart. And we got some nice little polynomial values. No negatives on this one. Okay, now that is the data I want to build a chart from. So I'm going to just shrink that back down. I can shrink it down further because I really don't care about those decimals. Again, the viewer's not even going to see this information because I'm going to unhide these. So once we enter this data, and just a real quick note here, take a look when I change this to say -4. I haven't hit enter yet. I'm going to look down here and enter 1, 2, 3. All of those values just updated. If I change this to 2, 1, 2, 3. All of those values just updated. If I change this value to 12, definitely going to have an effect here. All of those just updated. So this is a dynamic chart here. Okay, I want all of these Y values in a chart, and I could select them by selecting all the way down, but if I just re-replicate, I've got them all selected. And that is where I'm going to want to insert a line chart. This is our line charts, and we want the first one of those. And when I do that, I get this part of my polynomial. There may be more interesting parts, but that's what I have for right now. The problem I see is I don't have my X values down here. And my X values should be these rather than just counting from 1 to what appears to maybe be 1,000. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to select data. And this is the series I did, and it's my Y values, and that's what I want. But the horizontal axis labels right now are these. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ... through 1,000. And I'm going to edit that. And what I'd like to do for those is just click in from here down. And I could drag all the way down, but if you remember, that went to 1,100. Now, for whatever reason, this is going to be a little bit buggy. You'll see what happens here in just a moment. It's been happening for a few years now. We'll fix it in one more step. So I click OK. Right now, you can read it. We're going from A101 to A1100. I click OK. And if I look at that series, I'm just going to click OK. And you'll see that in my chart, it's got this mess over here. So I'm going to go back in and see what just happened. Right click again. I'm sure there's a good workaround for this. I'm going to select data, and if I edit, if I look at these values over here, they just stop right there for whatever reason. If I edit this, it says I really only went to row 112. Well, I'm going to once again put 1100, click OK, and now all of a sudden everything's good. My chart has those values. Now we may decide that this is a little ugly and should space it out more. I mean, this will space it out some more, but there are ways to right-click this and work with that. But I'm not going to go into that right now because there's some other things we're going to fix. We might want to, just pretty this thing up a little bit later on. Okay, So let's just play around with this. I'm just going to go X-min, just take a look. I'm going to go from -3 to 2, and now all of a sudden, that's pretty nice. It gives us a different view of this, and we can zoom in and try to find where that interesting part of the graph maybe is. Looks like we might have a maximum, might have a minimum, and looks like maybe at that point the graph's just going up forever. I don't know. We can zoom out some, but maybe I'm interested in to like 1.3 or something like that. And we just get a. It's nice that it's dynamic for us. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a tangent line. We're going to be able to choose an x value, and we're going to add in a tangent line. So to do that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look at, I'm going to unhide these. Ymin, Ymax we're going to talk about on another video, but we're going to go ahead and handle the next step here. So I'm going to say, what if I want a tangent line that's somewhere around this -0.72? I'm going to build a tangent line somewhere right in here. So I'm going to choose an x value of -0.72. The y value that goes with that, we know this. I've never done this before, but we're going to give this guy a shot right here. The y value that goes with that, we know that we have an equation builder, point slope form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. But I want these things represented with cells. So I'm going to change this to y equals slope times my x minus x1 plus y1. So if I can get a slope and I can find the x coordinate to go, or the y coordinate to go along with my y value, x1, y1, and get a slope, then we can build an equation of a line. Okay, let's go back. So my y value that goes with this would just be as easy as this, equals, and I say easy, but I'm going to have some entering things to do here for a moment. It just equals, once again, this equation. A times, the x value we want is this guy for right now, times, or excuse me, raised to the 5th, plus, try that again, plus my b value times my x value raised to the 4th, plus my c value times my x value. Lots of times I type x in here, and that would be a mistake. Raised to the 3rd, plus my d value times my x value raised to the 2nd, plus my e value just times x, and just plus my f value. So there's the y value that associates. Let's take a look. Here's my 0.72. Where is it? Somewhere right around in here. And that value above it, it seems reasonable. It's right about at 12, so I feel pretty good about that. Okay. Slope. Derivative. We need the derivative of this guy. There's not a convenient way to do that other than let's just mash it through by hand. So the derivative of ax to the 5th is a, I'm going to not even start with a, is 5. You can't put 5a. You have to go 5 times. It's not implied. So it's 5a x to the 5th. Okay? And I think you know where I'm going from there. Plus, oh, not x to the 5th. But you didn't know where I was going from there. X to the 4th. So there's our derivative of ax to the 5th. 5 times a x to the 4th. Plus 4 times b times x to the 3rd. Plus 3 times c times x to, notice I'm not typing those things in, I'm clicking them in, x to the 2nd plus d is 2 times d times x plus just plain old e. And there is our slope, and they say it's 0.6, and I don't know. We're not counting over by very much. It's not real steep here. Seems at least somewhat believable that might be our slope. And rounding, that's going to be saved for another video as well. Okay, so here's what I've got. And I'm going to be jotting these things down as I want. I've got an XY coordinate pair that is on my line. I'm going to jot this down on my paper, and we'll go take a look at that in a minute. That is really at C15 and C16. X, Y, C16. And I've got a slope that is at C17. All right, so let's go back and take a look so you can see where I'm coming up with this stuff. So here I've got my XY coordinate and my slope. So my equation becomes y equals C17 times my x coordinate minus C15 plus my y coordinate C16. Okay, so that's my equation of my tangent line in Excel speak. I hope you followed that. So let's go ahead and pull back up the Excel file. And now I'm going to go down and I'm going to add that to my T-chart. So in my T-chart, and I'm just looking at my little cheat sheet that I had here, I'm going to put, for this line, I'm just going to go tangent. This is going to be the equation of our tangent line, and I'm going to do exactly what I just talked about, exactly what I just showed you. You can back up the video if you need to. So it's going to be equal C17 times parentheses. Our x value is this one minus the C15 plus C16. And that's great, but as I replicate this down, I don't want those C's to change. So dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign. I do want the x value, the -1, to trace down. Enter. And I'm going to double-click replicate that. And we see our slope stays around 10 for a while, gets steeper as we move on. Might get a little shallower, but stays around that value. Not my slope, the points on my tangent line. Yep, it just increases. Of course it just increases. It's a line. I'm sorry. Those aren't my slopes. That's the equation of my tangent line. Okay, I want to add that to my chart. Here's a pretty slick way to do that. I haven't even seen this before today. I'm just like, man, there has to be an easier way. If I click the chart and look down, the chart is including these. If I just take this, drag this over to include that series as well, ooh, I hope this works. It's like my first time in real practice doing this. There we have our tangent line. Isn't that cool? All right. I think it's cool. Okay, so how's this work out for us? Well, let's see if does this really work? I'm going to get a tangent line that's over here at like 0.9. So if I put in an x value of 0.9, yep, there's my tangent line right over there, and we got the location of it. So we're gonna have some fun with this thing now. Let's just go 0 here. See how the tangent line just stays intact? 0 here, 0 here. Let's go back to something we're really familiar with. Let's just go 1 for D. That's just plain old x squared. And again, there's things we can do to kind of clean this up a little bit. In fact, maybe we'll do that. But if I put in 0 for x, we understand we're just a plain old parabola, y equals x squared. If I put in 0, I haven't hit enter yet. When I enter that, I'm going to be right at the bottom of the parabola. I'm right where we have a slope of 0, and there's my line. We know that the derivative of x squared is 2x. Therefore, when x is 1, we should have a slope of 2. When x is 2, we should have a slope of 4, etc. We can go from, say, let's go -6 to 6. Got a lot of information going on here. Let's go ahead and clean up this thing because I got just a little bit of time left. So oftentimes I just say, when in doubt, if you're in Excel, just right-click. So I'm going to aim at the axis, right click. What are my options? Format the axis. To format this axis, I'm going to look at my tick marks here. It says interval between. See, we have 1,000 elements in our chart, and it's just trying to put as many of them as it can fit in here conveniently. I'm going to put one every 100 elements, every 100 spaces. Is that going to do it for me? Or is it my labels I want? Ooh, distance from axis. Specify interval units. That's not, this isn't what I wanted here at all. I want it down here on my labels because that's an axis label. So distance from axis, I'm going to specify. Okay, so now it's trying to fit all 10,000 of them in. It was just trying to figure out what we wanted. So I'm going to say, let's go every 100. And now it puts them in this form. Okay, what else can we do with that? Let's check number here. For number, what do we have? Format code. I don't know. What do we want? I'd like those in a different position. I'd like to round them. So we can work on that when we deal with our round over here, but I know there's a way to round those things, and I will have to get back with you on that. Let's see, position on the tick mark. Just looking for all the different things we can do. Labels. I also know there's a way that we can have the labels stack up. But that I'm gonna have to come back. I'm gonna have to do just a little bit of research on that because things have changed since last time I've done this. Excel just keeps updating and I don't. So that's going to suffice for video 1. I will pick it up from there.